Have you ever gotten totally hooked on some old mystery, something that's gone unsolved for years and you just can't shake this feeling that the real story is still out there somewhere hidden?
Oh, absolutely. It's like a puzzle you can't put down. Those cases that they stick with you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. The world of cold cases. We've got some really interesting material to work with here, stuff that really digs into why these mysteries are so captivating.
It's fascinating how these cases, even decades later, can still grab our attention.
Right. So today we're going to be unpacking some of the most infamous cold cases that span from the mid 20th century all the way to more recent times. But we're not just going to rehash the stories. We want to understand why they still hold our attention, why investigators and even regular people like us are still searching for answers.
It's like, what is it about these unsolved mysteries that keeps us coming back for more?
Right, right. There's something about the unknown, the unanswered questions. It's almost like our brains crave that resolution.
I think there's a bit of that need for closure, but also I think there's an element of fascination with the darkness, with the limits of human understanding.
For sure. Okay, so let's jump right in. And I think there's no better place to start than with a case that, for many, really defines the whole idea of an unsolved mystery, the Black Dahlia.
Oh, the Black Dahlia. That's a classic, a real cornerstone of true crime history. The murder of Elizabeth Short in 1947, it's still one of the most famous unsolved homicides ever.
Yeah, and I think what makes it so disturbing is the way her body was found.
Mm.
I mean, bisected and posed.
Yeah,
It's a level of brutality that's hard to even process.
absolutely. And for investigators at the time, a crime scene like that would have been incredibly challenging.
Right, because back in the 1940s, they didn't have the forensic tools we have today.
Mm.
No DNA analysis, no advanced fingerprinting.
They were working with very limited resources. They relied a lot on eyewitnesses, physical evidence that was immediately visible, and basic fingerprinting techniques. So you can imagine trying to decipher a carefully staged crime scene like that. It would have been incredibly difficult to find any solid leads.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing to think about trying to solve a murder like that with such limited technology, and even with all the media attention, the countless theories, everything from organized crime to all these different suspects, the case is still unsolved.
It really is. And I think part of why it still resonates so much is because of Elizabeth Short herself. She was a young woman, she had dreams of Hollywood, and her story just cuts short in such a tragic way.
Yeah, it definitely adds to the mystery. It's like, what if she had lived? What could she have accomplished? And then the sheer brutality of the crime, it sticks with you.
It does. And I think the lack of a clear motive, the fact that we still don't know why she was killed, it just adds to the intrigue. It's a puzzle with missing pieces.
A puzzle that's haunted Los Angeles for over 70 years. Okay, so let's move on to a different kind of mystery, but one that's equally unsettling. The disappearance of the Sodder children in West Virginia on Christmas Eve, 1945. At first glance, it seems like a tragic accident, a house fire.
Yeah, you'd think so. But the thing is, it's not as simple as it seems. The house did burn down, but the remains of 5 of the 10 Sodder children were never found.
And not just no identifiable bodies. I mean, they found almost no trace of them at all, no bones, no ashes.
Almost like they vanished into thin air. And that's what makes it so strange. A fire that intense, you'd expect to find some remains, but there was practically nothing.
Yeah, it's that lack of physical evidence that really throws the whole thing into question. It's what fueled those theories about a kidnapping, a possible cover-up.
Exactly. I mean, where did those children go? There were so many theories that came up. Involvement with the mafia, maybe because of the father's political views.
Right, he was outspoken against Mussolini.
Exactly. Then there were theories about a plane crash, accidentally starting the fire and the kids being taken away in the confusion.
There were even those supposed sightings of the children years later.
Yeah, but nothing concrete ever came of them. And the parents, they never gave up hope. They kept searching. They put up a billboard with their children's pictures. But unfortunately, they never got any real answers.
It's such a heartbreaking story filled with so many unanswered questions. It's a reminder that sometimes, even in the face of tragedy, the truth can remain elusive. Okay, so from a potential kidnapping, let's shift gears to a more direct and frankly terrifying form of violence, the Zodiac Killer. Even just saying the name sends chills down my spine.
Oh, absolutely. The Zodiac Killer case, it's one of those that really captures the public imagination. Northern California in the late 60s and early 70s, a series of brutal murders. And then on top of that, you have these cryptic messages, these taunting letters.
It's like he wanted to be caught, But at the same time, he was playing this elaborate game with the police, sending them ciphers, some of which have never been solved, claiming responsibility for the murders.
And mocking their efforts to find him. It created this atmosphere of fear and paranoia, especially in the areas where the murders were happening.
Yeah, because every time a new letter appeared, it would just reignite the public's anxiety. Like, who is this guy? And when is he going to strike again?
It put a lot of pressure on law enforcement, too. They were trying to decipher these clues, trying to catch him before he could hurt anyone else. But it was like chasing a ghost.
And the fact that he was never caught, that his identity is still unknown, it just adds to the mystique, the fear.
Absolutely. He became this almost mythical figure, a boogeyman. And it's not surprising that the case has been the subject of so many books, movies, documentaries. It just continues to fascinate people.
It really does. But looking at these cases, the Black Dahlia, the Solder Children, the Zodiac, it's easy to feel a sense of hopelessness, like these mysteries will never be solved.
Yeah.
But our source material also highlights something really important: the role that individuals can play in pursuing justice, even decades later.
Yeah, that's a really important point. Sometimes it's the dedication of a single person that can make all the difference.
Exactly. And one great example of that is Michelle McNamara. Her work on the Golden State Killer case was incredible.
Oh, absolutely. She was a true crime writer, a blogger,
Yeah.
and she basically dedicated years of her life to researching this complex case. And her book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, it's not only a great read, but it really helped bring renewed attention to the case.
And she wasn't a detective. She wasn't in law enforcement. She was just someone who was deeply passionate about finding the truth.
And she had this amazing ability to connect the dots, to see patterns that others might have missed. She really immersed herself in the case files. She talked to victims. She pieced together this incredibly detailed picture of the Golden State Killer.
And her work ultimately played a role in his capture, which is amazing. It shows that even outside of law enforcement, individuals can contribute to solving these cold cases.
And then, of course, you have people like Paul Holes, who represents the more technical side of things. His use of genetic genealogy to finally catch the Golden State Killer was groundbreaking.
Yeah, it was. Can you explain a little bit about how genetic genealogy works for those who might not be familiar with it?
Sure. So it involves taking DNA samples from a crime scene and then comparing them to DNA profiles in publicly available genealogy databases. Basically, you're looking for distant relatives of the suspect. And once you find a match, you can start building out family trees, narrowing down the possibilities until you find your guy.
So it's like using DNA to create a giant family tree and then tracing it back to the source.
Exactly. And it's been incredibly effective in solving cold cases. Cases that were once considered unsolvable are now being cracked open thanks to this technology.
It's a great example of how science is constantly evolving and how those advancements can be used to bring justice even decades later. You know, it's funny, our source material also talks about the origin of the term cold case, and it's actually pretty mundane.
Oh, yeah. You might think it has some dramatic backstory, but it really just comes from a filing system.
Yeah, back in the day, inactive cases, the ones with no leads, were literally moved to a cold file.
It was just a way of managing caseloads, not a reflection of the case's importance or anything like that.
But it's a fitting term, isn't it? Because these cases, they do go cold.
Hmm?
But then with new technology, with the dedication of individuals like Michelle McNamara and Paul Holes, they can heat back up again.
Absolutely. And it's not just technology. You also have these online communities of amateur sleuths, people who spend their free time studying cold cases, sharing theories.
Yeah, the armchair detectives. It's interesting to see how they contribute to these investigations.
It is. It shows how much these cases capture the public imagination. And sometimes they do find things that investigators might have missed. They bring fresh perspectives, new ideas.
But there are also risks, right? Like spreading misinformation or accidentally hindering active investigations.
Yeah, that's definitely a concern. It's a powerful force, but it needs to be handled responsibly.
Okay, so as we wrap things up, I want to go back to that initial question.
Hmm.
Why are we so drawn to cold cases? What is it about them that fascinates us, even decades later?
I think it's a combination of things. There's the mystery, the puzzle aspect. Our brains are wired to seek patterns, to find solutions. And when a crime goes unsolved, it leaves this void, this unanswered question that we can't help but try to fill.
And there's also that element of justice, right? The idea that even if it takes years, even decades, the truth should be uncovered. The perpetrator should be held accountable.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. We want to see justice served, even if it's delayed. It reinforces our belief in a just world, even when faced with the darkest aspects of humanity.
And it speaks to the resilience of the human spirit. That even in the face of tragedy, in the face of seemingly impossible odds, we never give up hope. We keep searching, we keep asking questions, because we believe that the truth is out there.
That's a beautiful way to put it, and it gives me hope that maybe someday all of these cold cases, the ones we've discussed today and the countless others that are out there, will finally be solved.
That's a good thought to hold on to. So as you think about the Black Dahlia, the missing solder children, the chilling enigma of the Zodiac Killer, consider this. What if the key to unlocking these mysteries is closer than we think? What if it's some seemingly insignificant detail, overlooked for years, that suddenly becomes the missing piece of the puzzle?
It really makes you think. Maybe the answers are right there in front of us, waiting to be discovered.
Maybe they are. And as technology continues to advance, as dedicated individuals, both professionals and amateurs, continue to work tirelessly on these cases, well, who knows what the future holds? What long-held secrets might finally be unearthed? What cold cases might finally be cracked wide open? Those are questions worth pondering, questions that I hope stay with you long after we finish our deep dive today.
I think they will. These cases, they have a way of staying with you.
They do, and that's the power of a good mystery.
Absolutely. The power of the unknown, the unanswered question. It keeps us searching, it keeps us engaged, and hopefully someday it leads us to the truth.
Let's hope so. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. It's been a fascinating and at times unsettling journey, but it's a reminder that even in the darkest corners of history, there's always hope for justice, for closure, for the truth to finally come to light.
I couldn't agree more.
And who knows, maybe someday we'll be back to discuss the solutions to these very mysteries. Until then, keep searching, keep questioning, and never lose hope.